Hi and welcome back to A Case of Books. Today I'm going to talk through the best books that are being published in January. Now I had my top 5 all picked out, and then just this week I finished one of my favourite books I've read in ages. And so I'm afraid The Noise of Time by Julian Barnes has been bumped from my top 5. But I did really enjoy this, in fact much preferred it to The Sense of an Ending, and wouldn't be at all surprised if he picks up another Booker nomination for it. So I'm going to do these 5 books in order of publication, and the first one, which actually came out last week, is Human Acts by the Korean author Han Kang and translated by Deborah Smith. It's set in 1980 in Gwangju in South Korea, which is where Kang is actually from, and it's set in the aftermath of the student movement against the Japanese rule of Korea was really viciously suppressed. It almost reads like short stories because each chapter follows the perspective of one specific character, but she ties it together beautifully. And I was massively impressed by her writing and also hugely moved. This is actually a really hard book to compare to others, but I think that if you enjoyed The Orphan Master's Son by Adam Johnson, then you'd really like this, mainly because it's also set in Korea and it's also just really good. I also really love books when we hear from lots of different perspectives, and if you do too, then you should definitely look out for this one. Next is another book that was also out last week, and this one is a debut by an American author, and it is called Paulina and Fran by Rachel B. Glaser. This is the story of the friendship of Paulina and Fran whilst they're at university. And it is clever and biting and very funny and very dark. I love the way that Glaser gets so incisively to the heart of what it is growing up and also female friendship. I actually reviewed this one for The Independent on Sunday, so if you want to find out more, I'll leave a link to that down below. This is one for fans of Emma Jane Unsworth's Animals or Miranda July's The First Bad Man. Next is a non-fiction book which is called Excellent Daughters by the journalist Catherine Zope. The subtitle of the book is The Secret Lives of the Young Women Who Are Transforming the Arab World. It looks at the lives and roles of women in 5 places in the Middle East, Syria, Lebanon, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And Zope spent over a decade in these places researching the book and getting to know real women. The book's beautifully written, but I also felt that I learned so much about the reality of life there for women, both what comes from Islam, what Islam really says about the role of women, and what comes from outside of that. It's a sensitive, intelligent and fascinating read. I'd recommend it if you found Headscarves and Hangmen by Mona Eltahawy interesting, but also if you've read stuff like Jesus Feminist, which is a Christian book, but I found really interesting looking at women who believe you can be Christians and feminists. So next is the book that displaced Julian Barnes, and probably my favourite book of the month. I absolutely loved it, and it's called The Portable Veblen, and it's by Elizabeth Mackenzie. It's about a young woman who is called Veblen, named after the economist Thorstein Veblen, and I loved her. I haven't read a character that I fell for so hard in ages. And this is of course primarily due to Mackenzie's amazing writing. It is quirky and funny and wise. And just in case you weren't already convinced, there is also corrupt pharmaceutical companies, there are squirrels, there are odd family members aplenty, and at its heart it is the most lovely, unsentimental, heartwarming love story. Now, one of my sort of try it if you like books is actually a children's book, and it's Rooftoppers by Catherine Rundell. But I think that if you like Catherine's style of writing, then you will love this. It's the sort of book that I think that Catherine would write if she was writing adult fiction. And also, if you like the quirky but ultimately warm style of Vendela Vida, I think you'd enjoy this. Both of those last 2 books come out next week, and this last book comes out on the 28th of January. This is another debut, and it's by an author called Rebecca Mackenzie, and it's called In a Land of Paper Gods. And it's set in 1941 in China, and it's about Henrietta, or Etta, who is the daughter of missionaries in China, and so she is at a boarding school for the children of the missionaries. I was so impressed at the way that Mackenzie kind of captured this voice of a child who's out of her comfort zone and learning about the world in a very extreme circumstance. The first third is actually really quite funny, but then it becomes a very moving and quite an unusual look at the Second World War. If you enjoy different perspectives on war stories, particularly those about women like Codename Verity, then I think you'd like this. And there was also notes of Franny and Zoe with Etta's complicated but warm relationship with her religious faith. So those are my favourite books that are coming out in January. I'd love to know if you read any of them and what you make of them. Here are some other places you can find me on Twitter or on my blog, and please remember to like the video and to subscribe.